Ladies and gentlemen, in this episode, you are going to hear opinions. And while the podcast is endorsed by Uriah Heep, the opinions of the host and various guests do not necessarily represent the opinions of the band or any of the members past or present. With that being said, let's celebrate the music of Uriah Heep. Welcome to Uriah Heep, the Magician's Podcast. I'll be covering every studio song the band has recorded and every bonus track that I can find. Each week we'll go over a new song from the beginning to where they are currently, and as they keep adding albums, I'll keep adding shows. Let the deep dive party begin.
In the magic garden, some were singing, some were dancing.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Uriah Heep, the Magician's Podcast. Why am I not in my usual excited voice today? Am I not excited? Well, of course I'm excited. We're covering another Uriah Heep song. But, you know, this is kind of a mellow song. It is our last song for the season of High and Mighty. Lots of transition coming. And, you know, it only feels right to go out on a bit of a mellow note for this season. Today's song is called I Close My Eyes. This is a demo that was recorded by Ken Hensley. In fact, the demos that we've heard on this album, as I had thought were Ken Hensley, I think it was Goran Eriksson, wasn't it, that had commented on maybe an Instagram post letting me know, too, that the demos were recorded solely by Ken Hensley. And that kind of explains why there's no drums, no bass guitar, that sort of thing. But we do have some piano, some organ, some guitar in here, and some Ken Hensley voice. But it's a song that was never destined to be for Uriah Heep. Ken did record this for another project just a few years ago. Actually, probably more than a few years ago now. But in any case, this is the demo version of the song that would have been presented to Uriah Heep. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. I don't know. I just know that it never became an actual Uriah Heep song. But it was recorded on the same reel as a couple others. I think it was Take Care, and I can't remember which other one, but those were all on the same reel. So Ken probably recorded those in his studio or when the band was away, or maybe they were there. I don't know. I could speculate all day what could have been. But at the end of the day, nothing happened with the song until like 1990 when it was first mixed, and then was kind of rediscovered during these remastered series. And I'm glad it was, because it's really a beautiful song. It's very much something that Ken Hensley would have developed. I would have been curious to see, we've heard some really interesting contrasts between some of the demos and some of the final songs that did make it to the album. I would be very curious to see what the band would have done with this song. I can speculate it would have gone from piano to guitar. I could speculate, all kinds of different things. But at the end of the day, they would have done with it whatever would have just felt right to them in that moment. And then the producer would have either said, yeah, this is something I think we should release, or no, I don't. But at the end of the day, they didn't. So we only have this version. I think it's quite beautiful. And feel free to check out the other version that Ken did. I don't have that. I may be covering that at a later date. Right now, I'm just doing all the stuff that was released under the Uriah Heep banner. And since this is on the High and Mighty extended version, it counts. So here is I Close My Eyes. The piano just sounds beautiful, and I really have always loved the way that Ken comes up with these things. It kind of reminds me a little bit of Cold Autumn Sunday, but it's a little bit, I think, warmer in tone than that in the way he's playing. But it kind of has that same vibe for me. I love the organ just kind of creeping up on the piano there in the background, but it sounds really good. There is a lot of tape hiss on this, a lot. For me, it's almost a little bit distracting, but as the song goes on, your brain will go, that's not part of the song. I don't need to hear this, and it'll cut it out. I won't even notice it after a while, unless there's like some section where it's very barren and it becomes apparent again. But usually that's what happens with me. The room tone, I tend to notice in the beginning of a song, and then I just kind of forget about it as the song takes my attention away.
When I think about the distance between us and how hard it is at times here on my own, then I think about your smile, about our love, and in a while I close my eyes and I'm not alone. Sometimes I whisper your name or dream a while a lonely lover's game. All I want to say is that I love you in my way, and though the days seem long, I'll soon be coming home.
Well, I mean, it's very typical of Ken's writing style to have something that's just chock full of emotion, has some really good backups in it. He harmonizes himself very well. Some singers can't do that, but he does very beautifully. It's just such a mellow sounding song. I feel like there's regret in it, but I feel like there's hope in it. It's a really interesting mood for sure. But he sounds fantastic. And, you know, as this has gone on a little bit more, I'm just like, wow, I really wonder what he would have done with this if they would have developed this as a band. One thing I've always especially loved about Ken's writing is that he just throws in these little things that are unexpected and keep it interesting. I mean, he could just play the piano part through it, play it, repeat, go into the next verse. But he always finds a way just to throw in some dynamics, to throw in some unexpected stuff, to take it in a direction that you wouldn't ever figure it would go, and then just bring it right back to center again. And I've always loved that about his writing.
Though my footsteps fall, my love won't ever stumble. Through 1,000 miles a day, my love won't tire. And with each passing day, I can see our love will stay. So I close my eyes, kiss you goodnight.
You know, for some reason, this really strikes me as having a 60s feel. And it could just be the recording. It could be, because there is so much tape hiss and stuff on it. It kind of feels like like it could have fit well in the mid to late 60s. I really think that he could have sold this song to the Carpenters. And I think the Carpenters could have done something interesting with it. I don't know why that's coming into my head. I don't think I've ever in my life said that song should have been sold to the Carpenters or done by them. Nothing against them. They were a great band, but I don't think I've ever connected anything to them before. So I don't know where it's coming from. But that's the thing about, how I do this show. It's all about what comes to me in the moment. And in this moment, I would have loved to have heard the Carpenters do a version of this.
It's happened before, but I still don't really know the score. I want so bad for you to know what my heart is trying to say. What my heart is trying to say.
There was an earlier song that I covered on the show. I can't remember which one it was right now, but I'm pretty sure it was a bonus track. It was probably another Ken demo because I remember him singing it. But it seems like this was a real theme for him, talking about how his heart feels, talking about this thing that he wants to let out. Sometimes he's afraid to, sometimes he does. It's it's something that you can get so much mileage out of, because human emotion is the thing that we will have from our first breath, or arguably before our first breath, until we're gone. And it's something that you could make a whole career out of singing about. I mean, some bands make careers out of singing about sex or love, or, you look at bands like Whitesnake or the Scorpions or Aerosmith, who that's pretty much been their focal point, is love, relationships, sex, that sort of thing. And so you could you could literally spend your entire life writing songs about human emotion, what you feel, what's pent up inside, what you let out, what you regret, and you would do just fine. But I think that was probably Ken's strong suit. But what's interesting too is, in talking to him, it's not like he's always telling a personal story. I mean, Lady in Black was made up of a woman he just saw, and then he just created this whole story around it. So a lot of times we tend to think, especially when you have a really talented singer who's good at bringing out emotion, that every story that they're telling is their personal story. I mean, if you look at Reba McEntire, for example, who's written, as far as I know, only one song, and it was an incredibly powerful, touching song, don't get me wrong. But all the stories that she sings, she's telling them like she's been there, like she lived this stuff, and it's believable. And yet she didn't even write any of that stuff. So when I listen to singers like David Byron, Ken Hensley, I think these are guys that knew how to tell a story, how to present it in a way that made me feel like they were telling me their personal experiences. And even when you get into songs that are more fantasy, you kind of feel like it was a real event that took place. Like you could listen to The Magician's Birthday and feel like there was an actual party that happened and you were attending it through some sort of viewer, because they're bringing you along. It really takes a special talent to be able to do that. There's a lot of people that can sing songs. There's a lot of people that can sing accurately. They can sing, what would be textbook correct, I guess. I don't know if that's the right phrase I'm looking for, but, technically proficient, I guess. But it all goes back to a phrase that, if you've seen the movie Mr. Holland's Opus, where you could sing the notes, or you could play the notes on the page, or you could play the sunset. And I think these guys knew how to play the sunset. Just amazing, the emotion that they could pull from me as a casual listener even. And these things aren't necessarily even things that they felt. They might not have even written lyrics. Well, I know, like Ken probably did for this, but like some of the lyrics that they sang, they might not have been the ones to write them. Somebody else in the band could have said, hey, I got an idea, and, taken it from there. So that's a real storyteller. And if you're a vocalist, you're a storyteller.
Though I leave my soul, my heart remains with you, my love. There really are no more words that I can find. My love, you are my life. You're the color in my sight. So I close my eyes. You fill my mind.
You are the color in my eyes. What a beautiful line. I can't say I've ever heard quite that comparison before, but that is just a beautiful, beautiful lyric.
Sometimes I whisper your name. Dream a while, a lonely lover's game. All I want to say is that I love you in my way. And though the days seem long, I'll soon be coming home.
Oh, that's just lovely. And I love that even in a song like this, Ken still finds a way to work in a good swell of the Hammond organ. He was certainly a master of that instrument. And I don't know what the tonal differences are between a B3 and a C3. I know he was playing a B3, and we talked about that a bit. And it's just got such a beautiful sound. And, these organs were not meant to do what these rock band artists were doing. I mean, guys like Keith Emerson, John Lord, Ken Hensley, like this instrument was a blues organ, and that's really what it was designed for. And they've taken this thing to a whole new level. Just absolutely beautiful how they've integrated it for rock music, putting some distortion on it, just really making it sound huge and rich and full. It's such a beautiful instrument. I love that it was integrated so well for rock and roll, and defined a good part of Heap's sound during this era. But it's just so much emotion in the song.
Coming
Well, even though this wasn't the official end of the album, I mean, this just being a demo bonus track, it's so fitting. I mean, at this point now, we see a lot of changes in the band. We see the departure of both John Wetton and David Byron, and we head on to the next phase of Uriah Heep. Now, I do remember in an episode of Ask Mick, somebody had asked if he ever approached David about coming back into the band down the road. And he did. After Ken Hensley left, he went to David's house and invited him back to the band. And obviously that didn't pan out, but certainly would have been interesting. I think that it's tough because, when you have a lineup of a band that you just love and when they've produced so many great things, it's really hard to watch a transition, and you get nervous about, well, what's the band going to be like? Because you're replacing a member of the band. You're replacing the bass guitar, for example, but you're also replacing their writing, their performance, what their flavor is that they're adding to the band. And same with the vocals, especially the vocals, because that's more prominent typically. Although with Heap, bass, it plays a pretty dominant role in this band. But you get nervous. You wonder, is this going to be it? Is it going to be something that I'm going to enjoy? Is it going to be something that is just going to be something I can't stand listening to? You never really know. And people that are so dedicated to these bands that just, wait for what feels like forever on pins and needles for the next album to come out. And then in the press, when you hear, well, the band doesn't have this singer anymore, this person who's been an integral part of the band is no longer there for whatever the reason, it does put you off a little bit. And then you're like, well, I really hope I'm going to like this. But there's that part of you that just doesn't want to accept it. I mean, I see people all the time in forums for Uriah Heep saying, that the band stopped after Byron left, or, after Ken left, it wasn't the same band anymore. Well, no, it isn't, because you have different people. Ken was a pretty primary writer with the band. So of course, when he's not there, the style's going to change because he's not putting so much of his sound into it anymore. And whoever you get to replace him is going to have their own writing style and their own sound. They're going to have to find a way to perform the songs that came before them with respect to the way that they sounded. But by the same token, they have to put some of themselves in there too. And with the first album that they work on, with maybe the solos that they put into those older songs, they've got to start putting their stamp on the band, because they are now the person that has that role. But, it's the same for other bands, with Black Sabbath. It's people that said that there was no Black Sabbath after Ozzy. People said there was no Black Sabbath after Dio. You know what? Black Sabbath continued until Black Sabbath ended. And that's the way it is. Uriah Heep continued on. They're still going, but I mean, obviously well past, what are we in the mid 70s here? Past the time that Byron was booted from the band and John went and followed him. They continued on. And they're getting a new singer, a new bass player. It's going to change again. The song is going to change. The dynamics are going to change. Their look is going to change a little bit here. Gets a little weird for a bit. But that's what happened. And so you just have to take it as it is. If you close yourself off to it because you're afraid you're not going to like it, you've trusted the band up to this point. They've got 9 albums out. Why wouldn't you trust them that, whatever they're going to do is going to work? You at least open up and give them a shot. But I see so much of that, just the negative, which is just what I don't personally get about people and forums and the way that people are dedicated to bands. And I'm not excluding this to Uriah Heep. I mean, I see this with all kinds of bands. Like I mentioned, Black Sabbath, you see the same thing with Deep Purple. I mean, Tommy Bolin was just treated so miserably by the fans that just refused to admit the fact that Ritchie Blackmore was no longer in the band. And Tommy Bolin took a lot of criticism in that. Steve Morse got spit on by a fan member. Well, I'll put fan in quotes because that's kind of questionable. Why did you go to the show then? But, the band's transition, especially over the course of 50 years, I mean, you're going to see people come and go. So the other alternative would be to have a band like Led Zeppelin who just stopped. And we didn't get more albums from them. And, we get the occasional reunion song where they're just doing Stairway to Heaven again. But, they just stopped after John Bonham died. So I would rather hear the band go on and continue to make music. I'm so glad that Uriah Heep did. I'm sure that it was tough for Mick over the years to keep the band together at certain points. I remember him telling a story on one of the Ask Mick episodes. I think it was, I think it was the Conquest lineup. I want to say it was the Conquest lineup where he thought about just, for about 2 seconds, he thought about not doing it, but it just so happened that Lee Kerslake became available to rejoin the band. And, then the band carried on again. So, it happens. I'd rather have the band keep going. If they're happy making music, then keep making music. If I don't like a song, I won't listen to the song. If I like a song, I'll listen to it. But it happened. And we just have what we have to enjoy. And I appreciate the fact that this band has stayed together now 50 plus years and just so many albums, so much amazing music. We haven't even hit the halfway point yet. Even at 4 shows a week, we're a little ways away from the halfway point. Got 3 more seasons to cover before we get there. I know that they're working on a new album. I don't know when it'll be out, but we're going to cover it all because this band deserves it. They've put out so much wonderful music over the years, and I enjoy it. I love it. And you guys are here because you do too. Whether you know all the songs or not, you love the band, and that's why you listen to the show. And I appreciate that. And I hope that you guys have an amazing Tuesday. We will be back on Thursday to start the next album and to hear the new sound of the band. Have a great week, guys, or a great next couple days. Cheers. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Uriah Heep, the Magicians Podcast. If you have enjoyed this show, please consider going over to Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast outlet, leaving a rating or a review. Be sure to subscribe to make sure that you are notified when new episodes are available. Please be sure to share this podcast with your fellow Uriah Heep enthusiasts and anyone who you think would like Uriah Heep, which should be everyone. And if you are so inclined, please feel free to contribute to the Patreon account. And if you are not a Patreon subscriber, you can also pay through the PayPal link on the website listed in the show links below. I would also like to thank Uriah Heep for their very generous support of the show, and thank you guys for listening. We'll see you in the next episode. Happy days!